one of the biggest things that I think artists will have to lean into going into the future of AI music is just bringing everything about them
Yeah,
into
I
their
agree.
work.
Your personal history and your personal story, you can't put that into an AI prompt.
No, you
You
cannot.
can't give an AI like songwriter or AI artist like that history and that
Yeah.
background and that life and those experiences.
Yeah, welcome back to a new episode of the Real Country Podcast. This is Nikki, obviously, and I don't think you guys are even ready for the awesomeness that is our guest today. Literally from all the way across the pond, we have somebody who's got real country and western written all over them and everything they do, in which I'm a huge fan of, Mr. Jack Brownie. Hello.
Howdy. Aside from the accent, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's okay. I love the accent. And I should have prefaced with artist slash musician. You're a little bit of a creative in every aspect.
Yeah, otherwise unemployable. Yeah. Yeah, I found two ways to struggle to make a living, which is kind of fun.
Oh my gosh.
Um, but yeah, things are going great. How are things with you over in Nashville?
You know, I can't complain. For a Monday and it being freezing, I think I've been relatively productive today. And honestly, I think that's all I can ask. How about yourself? Because I know it's a lot later over there. So how is your Monday?
It's been a real Monday's Monday, you know? They always say like he's a real man's man. Like today was a real Monday's Monday.
The
Kind of
Monday that
slow.
keeps Mondaying.
Yeah, and I get the feeling Tuesday's gonna Tuesday right along behind it too. But it's been good. I've been kind of wrapping up some cool projects to start off the year, painting wise, and had my first show of the year on Saturday as well. So we're recording this on Monday. So yeah, like 2 days ago, I had my first show of the year.
Amazing.
Broke a string in the second song. Didn't forget any of my own lyrics, but I did try a pretty self-indulgent cover of Thrasher by Neil Young,
Okay.
and the lyrics are kind of more of a short story than they are a song, and
Yeah,
I kind of messed that up, but it seemed to go down okay.
that's okay.
Um, so yeah, it's been cool. It's been kind of, feeling like I'm getting back in the swing a little bit, after Christmas
Nice.
and New Year.
Yeah, I feel like, January is always a little bit of a slog after the holidays. You kind of just like feel like you have to get back in the swing of things. And
Yeah.
I think it's cool, everybody respects artists going out there and playing their own shows and obviously singing their own songs. And if you're trying to do covers, if you forget lyrics, hey, it's cool. I don't think anybody will blame you, but that's fun. I went to a Neil Young tribute this past weekend too here in Nashville. Maybe it was like a Neil Young themed weekend.
Maybe there was something sank in the water. Was it like a tribute band or like a show where everyone kind of did some Neil Young songs?
It was just that. So we have a little honky tonk in East Nashville, totally divey bar called Dee's Lounge. Have you been there?
I love Dee's so
Yes.
much. I went
It was
there.
at Dee's. Yeah.
Yeah, I played my first ever show in the US was at the Underdog, and then
Nice.
we went straight from there to Dee's, and yeah, Dee's was a hell of an experience. I loved it.
It's a
So
fun time, huh? Yeah, I'm like,
yeah,
I can get a beer here for less than $10. Like,
yeah,
it's not
East Nashville is the
right.
best. Yeah, it's just like way too many record stores and like cool honky tonks for my own good. It was tough, but someone has to do it. That sounds great. That sounds amazing. Neil Young tribute at Dee's.
Yep. It was super fun. There was like maybe 15 artists that came through. They each did 1 to 2 song each, same
Hell
backing
yeah,
band, and just like cycled through it. Yeah, so it was cool.
hell yeah, that's great. I'm
Yeah.
a big Neil Young fan.
One of your big inspos.
Yeah, I think so. I got into him kind of like I think everyone did through
Yeah.
Harvest. When you're a teenager and you think you're super edgy because you start listening to the Laurel Canyon folks. And then kind of from that, just kind of went into the rest of his discography. And one of my favorite concerts of all time is The Last Waltz. And so Neil Young's contribution to that musically is incredible, but then also with the whole Coke rock controversy
Sure.
in post production, it's kind of like rock and roll history, to 100. It's great.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
love that.
big Neil Young fan.
Nice. Well, we'll dive into some of your history as well as your inspirations, but I appreciate you being on. I know we were trying to like maybe coordinate in person one, but I love having you here regardless. And curious how often you get over it this way. Is it kind of like you're on a set schedule, like maybe once a month, or like what's your UK to US schedule?
So generally, 2024, I just did the one trip, but it was like 3 weeks. And then last year, I did Laurel Cove Music Festival in June, which was
Love it.
complete complete bucket list. Like
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. Like there's not many weekends where you're hanging around kind of backstage with, Cassius Culpepper watching Caitlin Butts do a textbook van reversal up a mountain. I felt that was
Yes.
very, very, Southeast Kentucky experience. So I was there for about 2.5 weeks, and we kind of went all over. I did some recording with my buddy Zach in West Virginia, and then September I had a little exhibition in Austin, and then went straight from there to Cincinnati, and then played Healing Appalachia in
Yeah.
September, which was really cool. So last year was like two kind of 2 week trips each time. And this year probably going to be about the same, if not some more. I hope more. I love coming over.
I hope more too.
Yeah, but no, I've got two separate trips I'm planning this year, and just announced two festivals as well in the US. So yeah, it's gonna be really sick, and yeah, just kind of always blown away by American folks. Like A, kind of inviting me over, and B, the amount of help I get coming over is just nuts. And it's kind of crazy when I'm there as well, because there's been so many people that I class as kind of heroes of mine that have
Yeah.
now become friends, and it's kind of surreal. You must have it too, like where you kind of struck up friendships with folks that you kind of wanted to maybe interview first, right? Ben
Music
Todd's one of them.
industry. Yeah,
Yeah,
Ben,
yeah,
100%. Music
yeah,
industry is very I mean, everybody's so giving, humble. It's a community. Like, I feel like, if you're not even an art, like in my case, not being an artist, just like, they kind of welcome me as one of them,
yeah,
every time I get to go to like a show here and see somebody that I knew or have interviewed or even talked about on Instagram, but I've never met before, like they're we
yeah,
just like see them and they're like, hey, and I'm like, oh my God, hey, and it's just like it
yeah.
kind of feels like we know each other as a community. So I'm really glad that you feel that too.
No, I really do. Kind of like genuinely like nowhere else too.
Yeah.
I've played a bunch here back home in the UK, played in Europe a bunch, and it's all great. But yeah, I've really never kind of had that, thing before where just everyone's totally cool. And the festivals I played last year were like a prime example. It's just
Yeah.
just people couldn't help me enough, couldn't, offer me places to stay. And then we were kind of joking around because when we parked up at Laurel Cove, for example, it took us like two hours to get to kind of where we were trying to head to, because
Yeah.
you just stop in all the time and like seeing people you recognize, or seeing people you like know but you haven't met, or people you haven't seen in a while. And yeah, it was just super cool. So definitely manifesting more of that this year for sure.
I love that. Well, that's a whole lot better than the opposite, people being total douchies, but we love
Yeah.
we love everybody being
Yeah,
kind.
yeah. It's way better than that, and
Yeah. So how would you and to introduce you for anyone who doesn't know, so would you say like your genre, if we want to go there, country Americana? Are we feeling Americana with a little bit of rock roots? Like how do you explain that to people maybe who haven't heard your sound?
yeah, it's funny. I mean, I don't know how it is in the US kind of across the board, but in England, like when you say country music now, it kind of means the kind of more pop country stuff,
Yeah,
which I don't really tend to listen to all that much. It's not that I don't like it, it's just that I haven't really dug into a lot of the kind of,
sure.
the pop country things. So I always say country and blues.
Country blues.
Yeah. Yeah, I started kind of I used to be a metalhead, and then kind of right around actually growing up into an adult, I sort of was like metalhead slash kind of blues guy.
Yeah.
And then yeah, kind of very organically kind of found or kind of rediscovered some of the stuff I used to listen to as a kid with like my uncle and my dad, and kind of that's how I went down the country rabbit hole. So I always say country and blues, and I feel like that gives a little bit more of a rootsy kind of flavor to what I do, which
Yeah.
is I think kind of sums up my music a little more than sort of some of the kind of more modern stuff.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me how people interpret it. I mean, here too, it's like even a generational thing. When you say country, they also like if they're younger, Gen Z, anything younger than that, they think it's pop country. But in my, 'cause I'm old. Whenever I say it to my mind, like I'm like, yeah, country. That's what I grew up on, the classics, '90s, just like or even back to William Earl and all that stuff. And it's
Yeah.
just it's cool that yeah, that you kind of feel the same, but I do feel the bluesy folk in your sounds and I love it. But it also has like its own spin of like I feel like your interpretation of Western American sound and I can't wait to dive into that. So that's super cool.
Thank
Um
you. Yeah, it's really cool. It's kind of it's funny to get people's like thoughts on what I do, because I have like a kind of my perspective, and I only kind of know. I guess I really only know like one way how to do stuff, right? So it's kind of funny. Like I hate writing about myself for that reason because when I'm still independent and I still do my own
Good for you.
management and all that. And it's one of those things where like the whole time I'm sitting at like these festivals, they want like a blurb and everything, and I'm like,
They want a
I
press
can't
release.
write about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just me. I just do this thing.
He's
And
amazing. Everybody loves him. I
yeah,
think everyone.
I have been honest, like, I do say like sometimes I do just keep waiting for the bottom to fall out and to get caught out, like, but until it does, I just keep doing it. So yeah, kind of doing my own thing, and yeah, I think the blues thing and folk, that was a big influence. There was one time when I just wanted to be Willie Watson,
Yeah.
and that would have been great. That would have been cool. And then kind of found my own voice and stuff. But I do carry all those influences with me, and on this new record we just finished as well, there's a lot of kind of those early rock influences too, which is really fun. So,
Very cool. So who are some of your inspirations then? I know we talked about a couple, but maybe talk me through some of your biggest.
I mean, kind of in terms of just like legendary status, you got John Prine. It's kind
Yeah.
of, who isn't inspired by John? But yeah, John Prine was a big find for me. I've always been a big fan like Tom Petty and obviously Neil Young and that kind of Florida stuff, the Californian stuff of the 70s. And Johnny Cash is my dude.
Yeah.
I love JC. Again, who
Love it.
doesn't?
Agree.
And then yeah, like modern, in terms of like kind of current, I was a huge fan of Ben Todd and Ashley May
Yeah.
long before I was lucky enough to call them friends. Same for, Drayton Farley. I absolutely think the world of his songwriting. And some of the guys I've been lucky enough to play with at some of these festivals too, Tyler Childers and Lucas Nelson. I'm a big fan of all those guys. And I think kind of the common thread is they're really hard to kind of put into a box. And
Yeah.
I've kind of been told I'm a little hard to put into a box, so maybe that's like a little kind of solidarity thing. I don't
There
know,
you go.
but yeah, I love all those folks. And then it's kind of a running joke. My music taste is super eclectic, so
Yeah.
it can be Ray Charles, and then it could be Gangstar, and DJ Premier kind of scratching, which I love too. I love kind of early hip hop and rap. And while those influences are a little more kind of below the surface, I do feel
Sure.
like if but no, I do have a very eclectic taste. And one thing I really, really love about this record we just finished is it kind of encapsulates all of them, maybe bar my love of West Coast hip hop. That doesn't feature so much, but everything else does, which is cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it when artists pull in a lot of different inspirations from different genres. It makes things really interesting. And I feel you there with a lot of different, you're pulling from a lot of different categories here. And I think there's like a term I see for it on TikTok all the time. Someone calls it polyamorous. Like there's
That is,
yeah,
I am so polyamorous in that case. Like I genuinely am.
I love
Uh,
it. I know.
me and my brother will be, we'll just be hanging out sometimes. He's a couple years younger than me, and I just turned 28. He's turned 23 this year, so we're kind of
Nice.
just about caught up in terms of like being two adults now, and it's really
Sure.
fun. We'll be sat there hanging out, and we'll just put one of our playlists on shuffle, and it will go from you know Old Man Neil Young, for example, to some crazy drum and bass song that one of us added, in a moment of kind of lucidity for new genres, and we'll kind of look at each other and be like, I think we're probably the first people ever that have had that rotation. I don't know if
Yeah.
anyone's ever gone from that, but
Mhm.
there's plenty of polyamorous people out there by the sounds of it, if it's trending on TikTok. So maybe not.
Yes, there are. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I feel you because like I'll be driving like this morning when I went to the gym, I was driving there and I was listening to like a folk acoustic mix on Spotify, which literally is like Gregory Alan Isakov, Hazlitt, maybe a little bit of Ben Todd, all just thrown in there. And then when I
yeah,
get to the gym, it's like just like you hardcore metal ass like Rob Zombie, Godsmack. And then on the
yeah,
way back, I just put it on shuffle. And so it's going through like, yeah, Johnny Cash,
yeah.
GAI, Rob Zombie, pulling back to some, like, classical, coming up with some contemporary, like, 90s pop.
Amy
Like,
with
what?
Gojira. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, it's the best.
People will think I'm a psychopath. But,
Yeah.
yeah, well,
I
that's
think
great.
just on the subject of like psychopathic like music tendencies, my
Yeah,
one of my best buddies has the most psychopathic outlook on music, especially streaming. He doesn't
yeah.
have playlists.
Okay.
He just has every song he's ever liked on Spotify in one giant rotation
In a
and will
life
just click
song.
shuffle. Um,
Yes.
I couldn't do it, but I do really genuinely admire anybody that can. I feel like you have to be very, very comfortable with your music taste, and mine's kind of too, mine ebbs and flows. I forget I've ever listened to someone and then kind of rediscover them a couple of months later and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely one
It's
for like moods and playlists.
I love that. Yeah, it's great to organize it in mood and playlist, but I think I'm with your friend. I throw a lot of the I'll just like put some stuff on shuffle sometimes with
Oh yeah.
the recommended plays coming in. And anytime I hear a song, I'm just like, boom, add to like, boom. Because what I'll do with my liked list too, other than shuffle it through, is like they're kind of little mental notes for me for songs I want to cover, like with content down the road. And I'll just throw
Great.
them into
That
the
makes
like
sense.
yeah, and so then I'll just go back and find it, with a recent be like, "I wanna say something about this," or "I wanna say something about this,"
Yeah.
and then I'll organize them into playlists, but I feel like maybe that's yeah, no, it's the ADHD in me, I don't know, but at least, your friend is doing the same thing.
Yeah, 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 massively. And I don't know, like my kind of playlist and thing the past couple of years is I've been doing these like kind of going away from what I used to do, where I used to have like all these kind of really separate playlists and they're all different moods and stuff. Whereas now I'll just if I'm going into like record an album, so I've
Yeah,
just finished the second one and the first one I did it too. I'll just create like a massive playlist of anything that's kind of inspiring me with that album
I
and
love
what I'm
that.
making.
I love that,
And
yeah.
and that can be really eclectic as well, which is kind of funny because it starts off with all the best intentions of right, this is going to be a country blues album, it's going to be a Jack Browning album. What kind of things do I listen to? But then it always
Yeah,
kind of changes so much, and then it can go from like Daniel Norgren singing these crazy like gothic kind of folk songs all the way to
sure.
like Ben's latest honky tonk stuff, for example.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, he does a really good job too of switching back and forth. And I know there's a lot of cool stuff that he's about to release this year as well. But let's kind of dig into maybe the difference between so your debut album was in 23, right?
Yeah, seems like
Red Eye.
ages ago now.
Yeah, just almost 3 years, but it does seem like a long time ago. So that was Red Eye Radio, right?
Hmm.
And then you have your second one, your sophomore one coming out this year. Talk
Yeah,
to me
that's right.
through a little bit then what maybe you feel are your biggest evolutionary points from first to second for you as a musician, artist, songwriter? Let's
Yeah.
go through that.
Well, the first album was never meant to be like a record, really.
Okay.
So 2022, I mean to rewind it a little bit, 2017, 2019, kind of the first couple of years out of high school, you're figuring out kind of how to be an upstanding member of society if you can. And I was
Yeah.
working these day jobs, and on the side I was touring in a rock band playing bass. And so I was like the stoic kind of
Nice.
dude holding it down. And it was kind of everything I'd always worked towards in terms of being a musician. You want to be on the road, you want to be playing to these crazy venues and these big crowds, and we were. And then something didn't really click, and I quit that band. And then just as I got my own project off the ground, we played our first gig on like March 13th, 2020. And
Okay.
then like 5 days later, the UK locked down completely.
Oh
Mm.
yeah. That one thing.
Yeah, you remember that? And then, yeah, this thing called COVID happened and it completely waylaid my plans. And by 2022, I really, I was working construction again and I'd kind of resigned to not really, I figured, well, maybe I had my shot at music, maybe now's the time to focus on some art. And I wasn't really doing a lot of art either. And then we had this massive change in kind of personal circumstance where all of a sudden we were moving away, and I had this real like panic moment on the train home from this construction job I was doing up in London. And I was like, man, I'm literally starting over again. Like if I move away, I'm starting over again. I've got to record something now while I have like some people who can play it with me, and while I know people that own a studio, and just I felt like I was going to be starting again. And way back in 2017, so this was, 5 years before I had this moment, I became friends with a buddy of mine, Rob, and he plays music. He's probably the biggest like audiophile I've ever met. His setup is insane, but he's never kind of performed or toured or anything. And he said to me like way back then, dude, if you ever want to do an album, hit me up. And I kind of thought, cool, man. Yeah, sweet. Great. That's really sweet. Didn't really think anything of it. And then I had this panic in 22. And so I hit him up. I said, "Hey man, you know what you said about recording like a couple of songs?" He was like, "Absolutely, let's do it." So we went into the record. We went into the studio to start cutting. You know, I was hoping two or three songs. I was the worst singer songwriter ever because I was doing neither singing nor songwriting. And then yeah, 2022, this first session, we kind of came up with three songs, and I thought about it. I thought, man, maybe I've got a couple more in me too. So a month later, we went back to the studio, did a couple more, and then
Yeah.
left that session. And then, by kind of early 2023, all of a sudden we're like, we kind of got 9 tracks here. That's a little more than an EP. Should we just
We
do an
have a
album?
whole album. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
But because of the way it came together, I think it was like you can kind of hear that it's me figuring everything out. And
I
I think
love
that's
that
probably one.
though.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that I mean, it's certainly something that I loved about it. I think it made it quite charming because it sounds like a, early 20 something year old who's,
Mm.
kind of figuring out something, and he's figuring it out in the room with with the band and with my producer Dan. And so I think that's definitely something that kind of endeared people to it, especially kind of folks that had seen me and had kind of seen my journey as well, through like
Sure.
this touring
Yeah.
band, and then this kind of real, you know, time of self-doubt and kind of, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna do music anymore, that kind of thing. So I guess like the big evolution with this second album is I went in, and while it was still very kind of, we didn't kind of go into a studio over 2 weeks and just record it. We did it over a couple months and different sessions and trying different things out. But it almost feels like this is the real kind of start, like the Red Eye Radio was like a beta test kind of thing,
Hmm.
and then this is like, right, I found the things that as a musician or a songwriter excite me. I
Yeah.
found the things that I love doing. We've kept some of the things that I love about that first album. So we've got, some spoken word on it. We've got some instrumental. So
Love it.
there's a real journey going through it again, which is something I loved. And a lot of it kind of came from either, my artwork or, literature I was reading or anything like that. And I'm just thinking, what would this painting sound like if I could just make a soundtrack to it, what would it be like? So that's kind
Yeah.
of how it started. So it kind of feels like, whereas before maybe I was trying like, man, right, I got to keep the art separate, I got to keep the music separate, and I've got to do it this way, and I've got to do it this way. Like now I've just gone, this is chaos. This is me. This is Jack Browning. You know, I'm coloring in. I'm making a living playing songs, and this
Yeah.
is this is me. It's kind of a little bit more unapologetic, I think.
I love that. I love everything you that was actually gonna be my next question, considering the fact with like your art, your medium art, and then your music. Was
Yeah.
gonna ask if you ever felt like a polarity between the 2, like, you have what you're trying to stand for in your medium art, and then you have your music as well, but then you said this one feels like you're blending them together, like I'm maybe writing songs about what I feel like my paintings are also portraying as well.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with just kind of what you were thinking there, because for a long time I felt like they couldn't be the same thing. I felt like even my websites had to be like split up, like
Yeah, I
people that
saw
were into
that.
music or music, yeah, music industry folks wouldn't want the focus on the art and vice versa. But it's kind of had the opposite effect. Like when I was in Austin, for example, in September for the Far West show, I was exhibiting with, it's not even an
Yeah,
exaggeration either. It's like 80% of my living art heroes were all in that gallery too.
art, is that
Yeah,
yeah,
Mark
oh,
Majori,
yeah,
Glenn Dean,
mhm,
Jeremy Lipking, David Casson, Thomas Blackshear, like literally everyone I've had in my sketchbook since I was in school and like pasted up in my studio. And it was really funny because, I don't have that kind of big history of like an art career behind me yet. I'm still super, early on into it and
yeah.
very young by art standards. But it was funny because there was almost like this thing where these guys who I look up to as heroes were like, tell me about this, like the touring thing, man. Like that's awesome,
Oh, yeah,
And I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, I guess that is a little bit kind of unique and,
it is.
is kind of something that I can own and something I can be proud of. And I feel like it's worked the other way around too. So, when I've been hanging out with, friends of mine that I've looked up to as songwriters and musicians, they'll always be like, so yeah, tell me about like exhibiting with Mark Majori in Austin and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of cool. At the very least, I got some cool stories,
Yeah. Well,
whatever happens.
what's beautiful about art is it's everybody's unique experience, and yours is so unique because you're blending 2 different mediums together, whereas, yeah, like you said, like your art gallery buddies are curious about the music touring and vice versa, which is so interesting. And one thing I'm gonna open this can of worms now, even though I had it later down in my notes, but
Please do.
you said something on Instagram, and I think it's important to call it out 'cause it's a big thing these days. You said something about AI and music, right?
Yeah,
And it's just like that huge, massive shitstorm that is already
yeah,
here, and it's just gonna get bigger. But the fact that you are leaning so much towards not keeping those 2 parts of you separate, that you're bringing them together in one singular personal brand is, I think,
Yeah.
incredibly huge, and one of the biggest things that I think artists will have to lean into going into the future of AI music is just bringing everything about them
Yeah,
into
I
their
agree.
work. Yeah, and I love
Yeah.
that you have those 2 worlds colliding because I think it makes very interesting art on both sides.
I think so too. And I think, like your personal history and your personal story,
Mhm.
you can't put that into an AI prompt.
No, you
You
cannot.
can't give an AI like songwriter or AI artist like that history and that
Yeah,
background and that life and those experiences. And I think that's the thing that certainly I value kind of most with songwriters whose kind of whole discography I love, is that I love digging into their stories and I love reading interviews they've done or, if they've written biographies. And it's been the same with kind of getting to know, some folks who I really admire and, on a personal level where, I love hearing their stories. I love hearing how certain things came around.
yeah,
And I feel quite privileged to be let into that. And I want to do the same for folks who have supported my art or my music or both, like I've been very lucky to have some very, very, very supportive folks kind of take an interest in what I'm doing. And
yeah,
I just love the fact that kind of we're all doing it together, like kind of we're all on this kind of journey. And yeah,
yeah.
it's very cool.
That's great. No, I love that. And too, so I think maybe we'll get into because we talked about how your unique experience sort of blends together and allows you to create this kind of art. Where did you start with, I guess, being where you are in the UK, kind of getting the interest in the Western culture to start doing these paintings? Like, how did that start finding its way into your work?
So there's one story, I've told it before, but my uncle was kind of the most American dude I ever knew, but he was from the
Yeah.
northeast of England.
Okay.
And I just remember like some of my earliest memories of him were just these huge belt buckles, and he even imported a Crown Vic, like an old police cruiser,
Yeah.
over to the UK. So that was kind of that. And I always
Nice.
remember walking into his house, and there was this like horrific, uncanny valley scale model of John Wayne that called you a pilgrim when you walk past. And I look back on it now and it's like it's funny as hell. But looking back, I think those kind of afternoons of watching westerns with him and
Mhm.
being introduced to some of the music through him and my dad. My dad wasn't a huge country fan, but he was a massive music fan. So that was kind of the language me and him shared. We didn't have a ton in common, but like we had the music in common. So I was listening to Bob Dylan, Pink Floyd, and going into school and telling my teachers like, oh yeah, I just they're like, oh, everyone can bring in a CD for the end of term, end of semester party,
Yeah.
and I'd bring in like Dark Side of the Moon or something that no other
Nice.
kids wanted to listen to.
Sure.
um, so like that was fun, and then like you kind of try and discover your own things and I said I started playing metal and kind of classic rock and hard rock, and I was in like a glam rock band for a while. Like I didn't do the makeup stuff, but I did have a pretty gnarly leather jacket.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, right around kind of 2017, I started kind of rediscovering some of the stuff that really made me tick as a kid, like with the westerns and through that, the literature and the music and the soundtracks. And then yeah, 2020 was when it really kind of heated up. I enrolled in art school and
Okay.
essentially spent like 3 years that I was doing that on the side of everything else, really becoming interested in kind of how the West has been exported to the rest of the world, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So, in the UK, it's all, films, books, music, touring musicians and that kind of thing. That's kind of how the West is brought to us. But I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of dig in and almost use the fact that I was an outsider to kind of, maybe give my work like an angle that you don't normally see. And just very organically just became very interested in, for example, like how a lot of like Western history has been whitewashed, over time. And I started digging into the role that like people of color had in the American West and Latino cultures had like in the West and how kind of we could represent the West a little more faithfully, a little more accurately. And yeah, there was no like one moment where I just kind of said, right, I'm suddenly into Western stuff. It just
Yeah.
kind of really happened organically. And then when I realized I could combine the art and the music, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like I can explore questions that I can't with my painting in a song
In
and
music.
vice versa.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm still figuring out. I'm probably still only on a surface level, but I am very lucky where through touring and through like exhibitions and stuff, I've been able to connect with some really cool folks and work with some really cool people who have some really cool stories to tell. And it's been a joy to kind of share them, either in portraits of them or songs I've written about them. But yeah, it was very gradual, and I think COVID was like a blessing and a curse in that sense because
Yeah, it was.
you know, yeah, if that hadn't have come round, maybe I'd still be playing bass in a rock band that I wasn't particularly happy playing in.
Gave you some introspective time to really look
Yeah,
through what
yeah,
you're
kind of,
feeling. Yeah.
yeah, it took the pressure off a little as well, like
Yeah.
when everything kind of ground to a halt, it was, for me, I've got very bad ADHD brain too, and when everyone else was kind of like forced to take some time out, I was like, right, cool, okay, I'm not falling behind. I can think about it, think about what makes me tick, think about what I'm interested in, and try and actually put some substance behind what I was doing, and really kind of think about why I was interested in certain things too.
Yeah, very silver lining way of looking at it. I've never thought about it that way because I had massive anxiety during that time. I was like, "Oh my god, I can't get ahead. Like I can't do
Yeah,
anything." Yeah, but
yeah.
I
I
guess
had that
everybody
too,
shared that. Yeah.
and it was often in the same hour. Like I'd have the
Yeah.
two thoughts, it's like just ping ponging between the two like neurotic sides of my brain. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, but
Like,
yeah,
I
I
should
tried
be
to.
working. I should be resting. I should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I should be really doing stuff right now. It's like, oh, no one else is. You can take a day off, and then,
Yeah.
within an hour, I'd be painting something and trying to be productive if I could, and more often than not, failing. But I feel like that time gave me a little bit of time to kind of think about what I was after.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it seems like too from what you said that and I didn't know this, but what part of the history makes it over to where you are seems like it's a little bit of like the surface level, slightly more polished, like not necessarily going deeper. Yeah. So then the fact that and I pulled this quote because I wanted to say how so after it, but you already answered the question. You said the fact that I'm a literal outsider to the geographic and cultural West actually colors my work with a unique perspective. And I really
Yeah.
appreciate that because I think that's so true, and it definitely comes through both your arts, and I think it's great.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that really means a lot. I mean, it's one of those things like I'm very conscious of the fact that when I'm in Kentucky, for example, I've more times than I can count, I've had friends go, "Man, you're like an honorary Kentuckian at this point. Like you drink LA, you wear like Liberty bibs and stuff." And for all the joking and how much that means, because I really do value that stuff. Like
Yeah.
I'm not from there, and it's not the culture I was born into, and the West isn't like my history per se, but that's okay. And it took a little while to kind of figure that out, but as long as I'm being authentic to myself, which is saying, all right, you're not from the West, you're not from Appalachia, but you tour there and it's part of your story now because,
Yeah.
you've got friends there, you've got, this kind of history there that you're building up every time you go back. And, that can be mine, if I
Yeah.
wasn't born into it, then I got some catching up to do, but I've got time to do it, hopefully.
Yeah. That I mean, I agree, that's your own unique perspective, it's part of your story, and I'm actually from Southern Indiana, but it's so Southern that I tell everyone I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, because it's
Sweet.
right there on the border. Yeah, so it's, like, right in that little like, Kentuckiana is what they call it. So I guess I feel like I'm an honorable Kentuckian, I guess, but
Yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting too because I feel the way I feel like you feel about that, about the American West. Because, like, when being from Indiana, I grew up always, like, I owned horses. I grew up, like, always going to Montana, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, all of those places, like, staying on guest ranches. And that was the life that I felt even though I only spent like a month there every summer when I was younger, I felt like that was the life that I should have been born into.
Yeah.
And it's interesting now on socials where like there's this movement towards everyone kind of wanting to go analog and wanting to go like do the homestead thing and everyone yearns for this life that they have never lived before.
Yeah.
And I think that not being physically in it doesn't make that any less compelling for you. So
Agreed.
I love that, like,
And it
correlation
doesn't
that
make
you're
your
going
memories of that time like any less authentic than someone that lived that every day, you know? Like,
yeah,
I was talking to Mark, for example, Mark Majori, and the whole thing that, he's kind of like me from the complete opposite side of the pond, but it was like a trip with I think it was his uncle or something to America when he was a teenager. And that was like the click, and
yeah,
arguably some of his work is, probably more authentic than, you know, some work that was created by people that kind of live that every day. It's just his perspective. And I think there's a difference between like authenticity in kind of like me more cowboy than you kind of way,
yeah.
whereas it's like, do you starch your jeans, bro? You starching them? Okay, you can't join this club versus, like in a authentic to you kind of way,
Yeah.
and that's something it was almost something I was ashamed about at first. I was like, oh man, I really don't do this podcast because, they're going to hear my accent. And then now it's like, no, people dig it. And, some of my favorite interactions have been in Kentucky. One of them was actually when I was hanging with Ben, Southwest Kentucky. And this lady was talking to me and she must have been talking to me for about 5 or 10 minutes or asking questions and getting me to talk back. And then, yeah, she was like, oh, I won't listen to any of that. I love the accent. Oh, I love it. I'm like, oh, all right, sweet, okay. So, it's one of those things. You kind of, I can just be myself, and if people do the accent as well, that's a bonus.
That's so funny.
It's someone's
I did
Mima.
somebody's meet yes, somebody get your grandma. Well, yeah, in the trend these days too is calling, like, older country pop music. I'm like, "Come on, man." Like, they're calling pop music the shit that I grew up on when I was super young. I'm not like, "Oh," but I guess it's
Yeah.
anyway. So and we've talked a lot about, like, maybe the Appalachian region and mostly about Kentucky. You have the song Muhlenberg County Stars.
Mm.
How did that one come about? Where did that inspiration come from? Because that one has got a lot of traction for you on socials, which is awesome. Yeah.
I had a guy reach out to me a couple of months ago, and he was asking me if he could use it for his first dance at his wedding. Him and his
Oh,
uh, now wife both met in Muhlenberg County.
I love that.
So that was kind of wild, a because it's just one of my songs being used for someone's kind of, one of the biggest moments of someone's kind of personal life, but
Yeah.
also as someone that isn't from that area, to write a kind of love song to that area and to the people there and to, my fiance who kind of has toured around that area with me too.
Mhm.
For it to resonate with someone that's actually from that area was super cool. And yeah, I was in Muhlenberg County on that first run and just kind of had the most surreal time there. I'd been working with the venue that I went to play for about a year by that point, doing some portraits for them.
Okay.
And they found out it's a great place called Sip and Spin Coffee and Records in Greenville, Kentucky.
Mhm.
And the one of the owners Jenny and Ben, two very good friends of mine. Ben actually plays in Lost Dog street band, so it was like, cool, great. So we were doing this thing and they said, would you come and do an evening, here and, we'll put you up and we'll show you around. So I was like, hell yeah. So I went there and was sound checking and then, yeah, Ben came in and said, oh yeah, there's someone outside that really wants to say hello. And I went outside and Ben Todd and Ashley May and Matt Heckler were there. I was like, oh
Yeah.
shit. Oh,
Small world.
yeah, and Ben came over to me, gave me a hug, and said, like, man, you got an empire to build. And we talked for a long time, and getting the chance to sing in front of them, and my two friends was terrifying, but it was
Yeah.
kind of one of those things where I was driving back to like the motel I was staying at, and I was like, did that really just happen?
That happened?
It's
Yeah.
like that was kind of surreal. And we'd hired a car in Cincinnati, and it was meant to be a Toyota Corolla or a similar model. And we got a 3.5 liter Dodge Charger, which was in white, so I looked like a narc basically. And so I was driving from Greenville to Owensboro, and then from Owensboro, kind of through Indiana to Louisville, and we basically
Wow, you
drove up
said that so well. Everybody is always like, "Louisville." I'm just like, "No,
Louisville,
man,
yeah,
wait."
oh,
Yeah.
Louisville, yeah,
Louisville. There you
Louisville,
go.
yeah.
Yes. Alright.
Yeah,
Louisville.
I don't want to say I'm native, but I have got a pair of Liberty bibs and I do pronounce Louisville properly. So, but Yeah, and I was driving back after this gig. I don't know if you know Jonathan from Think I'll Just Stay Here and Meme. You know, he's on Instagram. He's a great dude. He's been very supportive. So he put me on in Owensboro. So I'd gone from like Muhlenberg to Owensboro, and then we were driving through Indiana, and I basically drove up the butt of a hurricane in this 3.5 liter Dodge Charger, and nearly wrapped the car around a tree a couple times.
Oh,
And in Louisville, we had a night off. It was like the only night off in like 3 weeks, and Charlie Crockett just so happened to be in town with my buddy Nat Myers opening.
oh,
So
I love Nat. Oh
I
man,
love
yeah,
Nat. I love Nat so much, and we toured together a couple times. We'd hung out, and then yeah, he invited me down to that show. So I had basically the craziest 4 days you could imagine. And by the time I had kind of wound back round to Lexington, it was maybe an hour before I did a live taping for Red Barn Radio,
yeah,
which is a really great like public broadcast in Lexington. And it was like an hour before, and I just had this idea kind of floating around my head for this song, and I had that Muhlenberg County Stars kind of line in it, just thinking of the storm that we'd been driving behind, and
yeah,
just this kind of dream night I'd had in Greenville, and I just wanted to almost get it down like a diary entry.
yeah.
And I didn't try to make it particularly deep, or I didn't try to make it about a particular place or particular people. It was just kind of everything I was feeling at that time. And then yeah, when I laid it down, and especially when I got to play at Laurel Cove last year, and just had all these people saying, when is this coming out? And I was like, well, it comes out next week. And then it just went crazy. Like for me, by my standards anyway. And it just means a lot to know it's resonated, and you know, an outsider can have kind of thoughts on a place, and the people there like really love it, and kind of love it enough to, you know, if not claim it as one of their own, like sing it back really loudly when you go and
Sure.
play in Kentucky now, which is really sweet.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, getting to play at Healing Appalachia, like we played right after Tyler Childers, like to close the second night, and
yeah.
just had all these folks from across Appalachia singing this song back to us, which was wild.
It's amazing.
And it was very special. Yeah, so the song means a lot to me in the first instance, but it really means a lot to me now that it's kind of taken me on all these crazy rides. And yeah, got to play it for Ben and Ashley again when they came to see me this year, so last year. So that was really cool. And yeah, I think Ben made a comment. He was like, "Man, you did finish that second verse, didn't you?" Like that, because the first time I played it, it wasn't done, and it probably sounded terrible. So yeah, I ironed out a couple of kinks, and we got it out.
Nice. I love that about music. Yeah. And yeah, Ben and Ashley, wow, they're great. They're such great people. New parents. So fun for them.
I know it's
Yeah.
great. I'm so stoked for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Um.
that's great.
Yeah.
I love that so many people have related with that song, and it makes me very, very happy for you. But that's cool. That's great. I'm glad that's happening.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. I'm really looking forward to, because it's been out now for 6, 7 months, and I'm really looking forward to people being able to hear it kind of in context on the album as well. I'm really excited for that. Yeah, there's a couple of songs like it as well, where it's kind of a little bit of a diary entry, kind
Yeah.
of where I was at and the time I was recording it, and it just feels a lot more positive and a little more sure-footed, which is quite nice. It's a
Yeah.
nice position to be in.
Well, I think too, like you said, from your debut album being something that you're just kind of trying to find your footing, you're just trying to find your ground, your sound as an artist, your unique style, where you're just kind of trying to like figuring it out and prove you can do it to yourself and make all the mistakes that you need to make. And then the second one was where you're saying you feel like, okay, I found some things that worked for the first one. I found some things that I wanted to change. I found a unique sound that I want to bring in. Now this feels like me. So here's like a second album.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. I love that people can see that evolution of a singer-songwriter artist. Whereas to the flip side, like I think people put a lot of stock in having their debut album be incredibly polished and perfect.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's really nice when you're seeing just like the artist's first attempt at this. It's incredibly raw and real, and then seeing their evolution too between 1 and 2. Like, "Hey, we're trying it
Yeah.
out. Now, hey, here's my sound." So,
Yeah, I mean, like the second album thing is completely true, and
yeah.
for a long time, I kind of got in my own way, and I've been very lucky to open for some incredible people, and I always kind of took those opportunities to try and learn and to ask questions, and I was on the road with like Willie Carlisle, and
Oh, I love Willie.
yeah, I love
Okay.
Willie too. Willie's the
Yeah.
best. Asleep at the Wheel, I went out with,
Yep.
and I just ask all of them. I'd be like, this second album thing, like, did you think about it too much? And essentially, when I realized you could do it every which way you wanted to, it was like,
Yeah.
right, well, I just need to stop thinking
Essentially.
about it now and just even just record two or three songs just to get me started. And that was kind of how it happened. It was once I got two or three songs down, I was like, all right, I think I've got an idea where this is going to go, and I'm stoked with that. So let's see, keep pulling at the thread.
Yeah. Do you have a ETA of release for that for this year?
Yeah, it should be, if everything goes to plan, end of spring, early summer. So
Okay.
yeah, we
Like
had
late
some
April, maybe May, early June.
yeah had some
Okay.
had some very positive developments on it, but I look forward to sharing, and I'm very very stoked to finally get it out. I mean, it'll be kind of around 2 years since we started recording
Yeah.
that second album by the time it comes out. So it's kind of funny. It puts you in a really weird position because I've been playing some of these songs for like 2 years, 2.5 years. They feel like old songs now, but you kind of realize most people haven't heard them yet. So I'm like,
No
oh
one
man,
has. Yeah. So they're
yeah,
completely new to everybody else. Yeah.
yeah. I'm a sucker for like stationery, so I bought my new songbook for this year, and I'm already filling it up, and I'm like, it's all good, man. It's great. Keep writing, but you still got to put this one out yet. So
Yeah. You still got a
I'm very
lot
excited.
to release to everybody. Well, good. I'm excited too. I'm really pumped to hear it. Gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. I don't think I've ever been as nervous to interview anyone as I was with Willie. I was like preparing and I got there and I started talking to him and I was like, oh crap, he's incredibly smart. I can tell right now he's really intellectually intelligent. I'm
He's the real
super
force.
nervous.
Yeah, yeah, he really is.
He is so, like, well-spoken, so introspective, so well put, and I feel like I was struggling to kinda to keep up question-wise, and I was like, I'm in my
Sure.
head, I'm overthinking it, I'm, like, trying to listen to what he says, but he's so well-spoken that I was just, like, fumbling all the anyways, that just super side tangent story about him, but,
No, he like Willie really like just from that kind of week and a half I spent with him. Like, I was driving us both too, so we spent a lot of time in the car, and kind of like every word is like weighted. Like he thinks about everything he says, and I think that's really something to admire because I don't. I
no,
I
me either.
I ramble so much, but one thing I don't know if you noticed it with him, but it was one of those things where it's all like you think it like feeling insecure. Like he didn't make me feel like that at all but I was the same as you. I was like, man, I think he's gonna think this song is stupid, you know. Yeah, and then I play, he go, man, that's a really nice song. Like, that's great. I'm like, oh, okay,
Aw,
cool, man. So now he's been great, and yeah, I've just been very lucky with people I've been on the road with. Like that, there's not been one person I didn't get on with, or
good.
one person
Yeah,
I've listened to that I've ended up meeting that I thought actually you're a bit of a dick. I don't know. Like everyone's been super sweet, and
that's good, yeah,
yeah,
see, like
just very grateful. Yeah, very grateful.
Aw. That's wonderful. Well, we've covered a lot over the past hour. So I know we talked about 2026. We have another album coming out, Painted Skies, right? Maybe late spring, early summer. You have some tour dates here as well, maybe some art shows. So talk me through what people can expect in 26. Where can people find you? What are you super excited about this year?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, music wise, we got the second album coming out. We're gonna do vinyl and CD of that again. I think we just finished. We just sold out of our third pressing, like which we did independently of the first one, so which is just crazy. So yeah, we'll be doing that again, and I think I was worried I peaked last year, and it was only going to be downhill from there. But
Yeah.
if everything that kind of looks like it might be happening is going to happen, then I think it might make last year look pretty quiet. So I'm taking the boys out on the road around the UK for the first time, like headline tour. We're going back to the Netherlands for a headline tour. We're doing some European shows, and then yeah, obviously two tours I'm gonna announce real soon in the US, and
Okay.
I'm working with some American galleries now too. So you'll be seeing a lot more
No
work
way.
over there, which is really sweet. Yeah, I've just finished two big pieces that are gonna go to a complete bucket list gallery that I've been wanting to work with since forever. So yeah, it'll be a lot
Exciting.
of no, a lot of opportunities for people to go and see the artwork, hopefully. And yeah, it's very exciting.
You can't yet tell us where that is.
Not that one, but there's
Okay.
I've worked with Parsons Fine Art, which is a great gallery out in Santa Fe, and they've been very supportive. So yeah, if you're in the Southwest, there's hopefully going to be some chances to come see my work too.
I was gonna say I am gonna be doing quite a big Western trip this upcoming summer, and so if there's any chance to see it, I would love to. Yeah,
I'll
so
tick
keep
them all
me
off. You'll get a full
updated.
itinerary of what's where and when.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
and then yeah, the rest of it, I post on socials a lot. I'm trying to be better at kind of the more personal stuff. So I've set up a mailing list and I'm trying to update my website with kind of blog posts and kind of speak to people directly a little more. So you can find that if you just type in Jack Browning anywhere, you'll find it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here so much. And everybody who is listening, want to go find his music, his art, everything under your name across all platforms, right? It's Jack
Everywhere you
Browning.
find your music. Yep, Jack Browning. Just very uninventive, but yeah. Everyone thinks that's a stage name as well, which is kind of funny because of
Really?
the whole like Browning rifles thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Just just very lucky it panned
Like,
out
hey,
that way.
that's my name. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Love to hear it. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing all that 2026 has in store for you. And guys, make sure you go check out all of his stuff. And I'm sure I'll release on socials too all of everything that you have coming up music wise. When you have your album ready, I'll let everybody know. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Jack, so much. And
I
I'll see
know,
you guys
thank
next
you.
week. Thanks. Bye.